Welcome back with a new video. This time it's about the Tears album, the only Tears album, Here Come the Tears. It's part of my very unregular series of underrated albums, in my opinion underrated albums, and I think this album, Here Come the Tears by the Tears, can be considered an underrated album, especially if you think about the context in which this was released. It got good reviews, I think, but it didn't do as much, especially commercially, but also critically, and in the way that it's remembered, because I don't think it is much remembered. It didn't do as much as it could have and should have done, because it's an excellent album, and it's the thing that was before this album even came out was spectacular about it is probably also the thing that that led to it not being taken, I don't know, serious enough, because it's the comeback of Brad Anderson and Bernard Butler together as a duo, as a songwriting duo. Brad Anderson, singer and songwriter, and Bernard Butler, guitar player. They were, the duo that kickstarted Britpop in a way, because in the early 90s, after Bernard Butler joined Suede, Suede became initially overnight a sensation, and their first two albums, the albums with Bernard Butler on guitar, I think still to many people are the two best Suede albums. My personal favorite is Coming Up, the third album, but I think the first two are almost as good, and I think those are the three best Suede albums, the first three. And Bernard Butler was very important to the group, so when he left after the second Suede album, Dogman's Star, I think in 1994, people thought that Suede were finished, and as I said, my favorite album is Coming Up, the album after that, so in my opinion, and also the reality of it would show they weren't finished, they had big successes after that. But something was missing. Even I, as a fan of Coming Up, have to admit something was missing from all the albums, the subsequent albums without Bernard Butler. So when in 2004 it was announced that Bernard Butler and Brad Anderson would, are getting together, but this time for a new group, not for Suede, which weren't active at that time, very complicated band history also. That was for someone like me, and I think to many Britpop fans and people in Britain, it was also sensational news, and the excitement was very, very high anticipation. And when the album in 2005 came out, I wrote for a music magazine at the time in Austria, and so I got it even before release, and I listened to it, and I expected a lot, of course. And also in a way I expected to be disappointed. When you're expecting so much, it's often a disappointment, especially when you consider the Suede albums that went before that, which weren't that good in my opinion. But then I was blown away, and I thought, wow, this is the best. If this would be a Suede album, this would be the best Suede album. I still stand by this opinion. I think if this would be a Suede album, and this is why I say it's underrated, because not many people think that way. I think many people who don't think that way haven't even listened to that album, or didn't listen, often enough to that album to come to that conclusion. But I think this is the best thing that Brad Anderson and Bernard Butler, together or separated, ever have done in a way. Of course, it's not because it hasn't the freshness, the new thing about the first two Suede albums. It can't have that historical importance, but if this would have been the debut album by Suede, I think we would talk about the best Suede album. And to my big surprise, after the album came out and the dust had settled, it didn't do much. It just charted. It didn't chart very high. I think it charted like number 15 in Britain, and these were about the only charts in the world where it even charted, and it went quickly in and out. The singles also didn't do much, and shortly after they played some shows together, but then they called it quits again, and Brad reformed Suede, the lineup without Bernard Butler, and in the past 10-15 years made some decent Suede albums, but nothing as exciting and as good as the Tears album. It's full of great songs, and it sounds like a third album with Bernard Butler, a third Suede album could have sounded in a way. And because the songwriting, the songs, they picked up where they left off in a way, but even more catchy, more, it has more vitality even than the first two Suede albums, especially more than the second Suede album. And so it's a bit like coming up with this very optimistic, some would say shallow, but let's say optimistic, energetic Suede album. And this could have been the third album, because this is also this optimism and this euphoria, but also the depths and the songwriting genius of Bernard and Brett together. And standout tracks, it's just standout tracks. To me, this is a masterpiece, the forgotten masterpiece of the noughties of the first decade of the 21st century in a way. It starts off with Refugees, which I think was also one of those singles that didn't do much. Great song. Autograph, the second song, one of my top 10. It's not a Suede album, but if we pretend that this is a kind of a Suede album, one could say that the Suede albums after Bernard Butler aren't really Suede albums in a way. So if we say this is a Suede album, Autograph, maybe one of my top 10 songs. It would be one of my top 10 songs. Imperfection is even better than Autograph, and my favorite track on that album, Beautiful Pain, maybe alongside Stay Together, which is from the very early Suede, alongside Stay Together and So Young, probably my favorite song of the Brett Anderson, Bernard Butler duo songwriting team. This is an awesome album. I think more people should know about it, and those who knew about it then maybe even listened once or twice to it, they should re-listen to it. It's really very strange how with such a big story behind it, with such an exciting story, the estranged two songwriters coming together again, that nothing more happened with it. That's really something. It was lost in the mix, lost in the shuffle. Maybe it would have helped if they would have reformed as Suede, also with the other Suede members, and made a new Suede album in the original lineup. It would be maybe not fair to, I think Richard Oakes is the name of the successor of Bernard, but maybe they could have him as well in the group so that they are 6-piece, But they could have just put Bernard back into the group and made this album with him as a sixth member. Maybe it would even sound better, because then it would even more sound like the Suede, the team that's working, the formula that works. But even as a Tears album with different kind of rhythm section, it's awesome. It's a great album. But I think also for the reason that it didn't do that much, they quickly after that they called it a day again. I don't know what their relationship is now at the moment. It was always very complicated, even during the making of this album. It was probably a bit complicated. But I think they should work together. Their best work is usually when Brett and Bernard are working together. So maybe if I have a wish to the gods, maybe the next Suede album, if there will be a next Suede album, should be that idea with the Suede lineup as it is now, with Richard on the guitar, but with Bernard maybe added as a sixth member. They always outdo themselves when they're working together. In my opinion, one of the most underrated albums of the past 30 years. And great lost masterpiece not of the Britpop era, because it's after that, but it's like this is maybe the last great Britpop album, one could say, 5 years after the 90s. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you want to. Till next time, goodbye.